Let's first take a look at where this entire mess began, including when, where, and how. Let's go back to the ancient time of the 1st century. Picture Judea, a province under the Roman Empire's rule. It is here in this historical hotspot that the Roman Catholic Church got its roots. Jesus Christ, his teachings, and his crew of disciples were stirring up a storm of faith in a land teeming with different beliefs and ideas. Back then, Christianity wasn't the massive institution we know today. It was more like a whisper in a very, very noisy room. Fast forward a few centuries, and things really started to change. Emperor Constantine in 313 AD threw Christians a bone with the Edict of Milan. Then in 325 AD came the Council of Nicaea, where they ironed out some of the key beliefs they wanted to move forward with. And before you know it, the Roman Catholic Church was officially on the map, with Rome as its headquarters. The Pope became a very, very big deal, not just in matters of faith, but in worldly affairs too. He began pulling strings and rubbing shoulders with some of the most powerful kings and queens of that time. But understandably, it wasn't all sunshine and roses for the Pope and practicing Catholics. Behind the grand cathedrals and solemn ceremonies, there was some serious drama brewing. Power struggles, backstabbing, you name it. The Roman Catholic Church was not immune to it. And so the stage was set for a wild ride throughout the centuries. From victories to failures, from big-time splits to shakeups, the Roman Catholic Church's story is indeed one of grit and grace. Let's now take a look at the modern Roman Catholic Church and the start of its scandals and controversies. The Roman Catholic Church has found itself caught up in numerous scandals and controversies throughout the years. These various controversies have somewhat shaken the faith of many believers and drawn a lot of scrutiny from the public eye. Perhaps the most glaring issue to affect the Roman Catholic Church have been the widespread reports of sexual abuse being done by its clergy members. Revelations of such abuse sent shockwaves throughout the community as a whole, and many have asked for a complete restructuring of the system.
For the past 2 decades, the Roman Catholic Church has been in the spotlight, plagued by a child abuse problem it hasn't resolved. It's been a global reckoning, spanning dozens of countries.
C'est une question très simple, c'est est-ce que vous avez déjà agressé sexuellement les enfants?
Pope Francis has held meetings.
Invoking the guidance of the Holy Spirit, Pope Francis opens a landmark sex abuse summit on abuse.
By calling abusive clergy tools of Satan.
And expressed sympathy for the pain of survivors.
El dolor y la vergüenza que siento ante el daño irreparable.
In 2021, the Vatican enshrined new canon law, encouraging reporting by survivors and explicitly banning cover-up. Some saw it as a turning point. But on the ground, as cases in the US mount, prosecutors and activists say the church is fighting hard against survivors.
Some of the dioceses sought to prevent the entire report from ever seeing the light of day. In effect, they wanted to cover up the cover-up.
Lobbying against legislation that would allow more victims to come forward.
We exposed the abuse within the church and their response, particularly by some of the bishops who were engaged in the conspiracy and cover-up, was to go spend parishioner money to hire lobbyists to try and make it harder for survivors to confront their abusers in court.
A number of survivors have bravely come forward to share their stories, which have shed light on years of systematic abuse and cover-ups.
Tonight, hundreds of new allegations against Northern California priests, including some who still work here in the Bay Area. They're accused of sexually abusing children, and dozens are being publicly named for the very first time. Our investigation into Catholic clergy abuse is now revealing startling new depths to a scandal spanning decades. Investigative reporter Kansas Wynn shows us now with a story you'll see only on NBC Bay Area.
For the past 8 months, we have poured through more than 100 lawsuits and interviewed accusers and their advocates across the state. The claims have proven to be a trove of new information that show what we previously knew about the scandal is likely just the tip of the iceberg.
For the first time in more than 40 years.
I haven't been back since I was in 8th grade.
Rick Pfisterer walks down the Castro Valley sidewalk where his grandmother lived in this orange house and prayed just across the street at Our Lady of Grace.
This church meant everything to my grandma.
Here lie his childhood memories and his nightmares that Rick Pfisterer says began in the 4th grade.
I was an altar boy. The man raped me. He physically raped me in that house right over here. Physically took me in there. He did god-awful things.
My only two emotions for the last 36 years have been fear and anger. I first got to know David Polson as a junior in high school at Bradford Central Christian. He had just been ordained and came out of the seminary at that time. And I was becoming a junior and was in his English class. He and I immediately hit it off as friends. You know, I gained a lot of respect for him. I had a lot of trust in him. He knew more about me at that time in my life than probably anybody. It was May of 1981, just before I graduated. I was still 17 years old. He wanted to go see the shrine of Our Lady of Fatima. We were walking into a really dusty, dingy hotel. And of course, as always, he wanted to wrestle and tickle, which are things that, you know, are part of that grooming process over time. Although this time I was a little more concerned because of the type of place we were in, and I realized, okay, this is more of a concern. So when he jumped on me to wrestle, I could feel a different person on me. I could smell his breath. I could tell that there was more that he wanted than just to wrestle. Even seeing him recently in shackles and orange jumpsuit, I was severely conflicted. You know, the man before the abuse and even during the grooming process was easy to love. He was a supportive, great person and influence on my life. Yet you're struck with the other half of that he turned into what I would consider to be a monster. Life-wise, I became closed. I didn't give people affection. I didn't receive affection. I was in a shell. I was married in '85 and I fell in love with the most beautiful woman in the world and I shut her out. I did the same thing with my children. They didn't know which dad they were going to get, the happy-go-lucky, I love you dad, or the angry dad who's frustrated with life and not happy whatsoever. There are kids being groomed right now and sexually abused within the church, throughout the country and throughout the world. It's safe to come forward if you haven't already. And you don't have to do it to media. You can just do it to another survivor. It really helps. It is very supportive out here.
The scandal that came from this has led to intense scrutiny and demands for accountability, both from within the church and the broader community. But the controversies don't end there. The Roman Catholic Church has faced criticism for its stance on various social issues as well. This has led to heated debates that challenge long-held beliefs and traditions within the Roman Catholicism. Many of these controversies have centered around the church's position on reproductive rights, same-sex marriage, and gender identity, which have all been a hot topic as of late. These issues have sparked internal divisions within the church itself, with some advocating for gender inclusivity and others staunchly defending the traditional teachings.